Alarms screamed across the facility as the gravity index spiked into the red again, a deep mechanical groan echoing through the structure, like the planet itself was clenching. Soldiers braced, claws digging into reinforced flooring, some dropping to one knee as the invisible force pressed down harder than expected. On this world, strength wasn't measured by size or weapons, it was measured by how well you endured the crushing unpredictability of gravity itself. But today, something was wrong. The strongest among them had fallen. She had been standing at the center of the training hall moments before, unmoving, unshaken, the kind of warrior others instinctively kept distance from. Then the surge hit, stronger than forecast, and her body reacted in a way no one had ever seen. She stiffened first, her breath catching sharply, then her legs trembled, not from weakness, but from something internal, something building. When she tried to step forward, her body refused. Not a stumble, not a miscalculation. Her legs simply wouldn't obey. The pressure locked her in place before forcing her down, slowly, unwillingly, until one knee touched the ground. The room had gone silent in a way that felt unnatural. She did not fall. Warriors like her did not fall. And yet she couldn't stand back up. Now she remained there, surrounded by a swarm of medics and officers speaking too quickly, their voices layered with concern they were trying and failing to hide. Diagnostic devices hovered around her, scanning, recalculating, feeding streams of data no one seemed to fully understand. The readings made no sense. Her vitals were stable, her musculature intact. No structural damage, no visible trauma. And yet she couldn't move. It is not injury, one of the medics insisted, voice tense. Her internal systems are under extreme compression, but there is no external cause. There is always a cause. Another snapped back. She clenched her jaw, eyes narrowing, refusing to let any sign of weakness show despite the obvious situation. The pressure hadn't gone away. It sat deep within her body, concentrated, overwhelming, tightening every time she even attempted to shift her weight. Standing wasn't just difficult, it felt impossible. And worse than the physical sensation was the awareness of every eye in the room watching her struggle. "I do not require assistance," she said coldly, attempting to push herself upright. She barely lifted an inch before the pressure surged again, forcing her back down. A sharp exhale escaped her before she could stop it. That made it worse. The silence returned, heavier this time. Someone activated a higher-level alert. Far across the facility, in a section far less dramatic and significantly less respected, a human engineer was elbow-deep in an open panel, muttering to himself while trying to reroute a malfunctioning stabilizer coil. Unlike the rest of the base, his workspace wasn't filled with urgency. It was cluttered, noisy, and smelled faintly of overheated circuits and something suspiciously like burned food. "Okay, if I were a completely over-engineered alien system," he murmured, tapping the side of the panel, "where would I hide the actual problem?" The panel sparked in response. "Yeah, that tracks." He leaned back, wiping his hands on a cloth that had definitely seen better days, just as a loud chime echoed through the corridor outside. Not a normal alert, not even a serious one. A command-level summons. He froze for a second, blinking. "That can't be for me." It was. Two armored personnel appeared moments later, scanning the room before locking onto him with unsettling precision. "You are required," one said. He looked behind himself, just to be sure. "Pretty sure you've got the wrong guy. I fix broken panels, not whatever that alarm was. You are the only human engineer currently assigned to gravity systems." "Okay, that feels like a stretch in qualifications." "You are required," the voice repeated. He sighed, grabbing his toolkit out of habit. "If this is about the stabilizer in Sector 3, I already told." "It is not." "Great. That's worse." Minutes later, he stepped into the training hall and immediately knew something was off. Not because of the gravity shift, he was used to that by now, but because of the atmosphere. Tense. Focused. Too many high-ranking individuals in one place. And at the center of it all, he stopped walking. Oh, the warrior. Even he knew who she was, and he made it a general rule not to know important people. It kept life simpler. But her reputation had a way of spreading whether you wanted it to or not. Right now, she was on one knee, surrounded by experts who looked completely out of their depth. He tilted his head slightly, observing. No visible injury. No structural collapse. But the way she held herself, rigid, controlled, fighting something internal, it clicked faster than he expected. Huh. Several heads turned toward him. One of the medics looked openly annoyed. This area is restricted. Yeah, I figured, he replied casually, stepping a little closer anyway. So, what's the diagnosis? There is ongoing internal compression with no identifiable source. He nodded slowly.
Right.
And you've ruled out environmental amplification? We have accounted for all known variables. Aha. He crouched slightly, studying her posture more carefully. The tension wasn't random. It was concentrated, reactive, like something was overcompensating instead of failing. He exhaled. Okay, this is gonna sound really dumb, he said. No one here is interested in. It's basically extreme muscle compression. Silence. Complete, immediate, absolute silence. The kind that made it very clear he had just said something incredibly stupid or incredibly bold. The warrior's gaze snapped to him, sharp and dangerous despite her position.
Explain, she said.
He scratched the back of his neck, unfazed. I mean, I could be wrong, but it looks like your body's reacting to the gravity spikes by over-tightening everything to compensate. Like, way too much. So, instead of stabilizing you, it's locking you up. One of the medics scoffed. That is an oversimplification to the point of absurdity. Yeah, he admitted easily. It usually is. He glanced back at her. But it also usually means the fix is simpler than you think. No one spoke. No one moved. And somehow, despite the tension, despite the disbelief, he didn't look uncertain at all. The silence didn't last long. This is not a muscular issue, one of the senior medics said sharply, stepping forward as if to physically block the human from getting any closer. Her internal systems are responding to gravitational fluctuation on a cellular level. Your interpretation lacks both depth and accuracy. Yeah, he said again, completely unfazed. Still looks like muscles to me. A few of the nearby officers exchanged looks that hovered somewhere between disbelief and secondhand embarrassment. No one spoke to elite warriors or senior medics like that. Not unless they had a death wish or were too ignorant to understand the risk. The warrior herself didn't look away from him. Her eyes were narrowed, studying, weighing. The pain was still there. He could see it in the tension along her posture, but there was something else now. Curiosity, irritation, maybe both. You speak with confidence, she said slowly, her voice controlled but edged. For someone who admits uncertainty. He gave a small shrug. Confidence is cheaper than being right. I just need to be right enough. That is not reassuring. It's not supposed to be, he replied. Another gravity fluctuation rolled through the station, lighter than before but still enough to shift the balance in the room. Several of the personnel adjusted instinctively. The warrior's body reacted immediately. Her shoulders stiffened, her breath caught, and the pressure clearly surged again. She tried to rise. Again, and again she failed. This time the strain was more visible. Not weakness, never that, but frustration. Controlled, contained, but building. The human watched closely, then exhaled through his nose. Okay, yeah, that reaction right there? That's exactly what I'm talking about. The medic snapped. You will refrain from commentary unless you are contributing something of value. I am, he said simply. You're just not gonna like it. The warrior's gaze flicked briefly toward the medic, silencing him without a word. Then she looked back at the human. Say it. He hesitated for half a second, not out of fear, but like he was deciding how blunt to be. You're overcorrecting, he said. Your body's trying so hard to stabilize you against the gravity spikes that it's basically locking your lower half in place. Too much tension. Too much compression. You're fighting the force instead of adapting to it. That is how strength functions, she replied. Yeah, on your world maybe. On mine? That's how you pull something and make it worse. Another pause. Then, quietly but firmly, what do you suggest? That got a reaction. Several heads turned sharply toward her. One of the officers actually took a step forward. You cannot be considering. I did not ask for your assessment, she cut in, not even looking at him. The human blinked once, then gave a small grin. Okay, didn't expect to get this far. He set his toolkit down casually and gestured slightly. First thing, you need to stop trying to power through it. Her expression hardened instantly. That is not an acceptable solution. I didn't say stop permanently, he replied. I said stop doing the exact thing that's making it worse. She didn't respond, but she didn't dismiss him either. That was enough. Second thing, he continued, we need to get some movement back in there. Controlled. Gradual. Not forced. The medic let out a short, disbelieving sound. Movement will increase the internal strain. Uncontrolled movement, yeah, the human said. Controlled movement? Different story. He glanced back at her. This is gonna feel weird, he added. And you're probably gonna hate it. I already do, she said flatly. Good. Then expectations are aligned. A few nearby personnel actually looked like they didn't know whether to intervene or just watch the inevitable disaster unfold. He crouched slightly, careful not to invade her space too abruptly, and gestured again. All right. Try shifting your weight. Just a little. Not up, sideways. She didn't move. Sideways, she repeated, as if the concept itself was questionable. Yeah. Don't fight the pressure head-on. Redirect it. Another pause. Then, slowly, very slowly, she attempted it. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but the reaction was immediate. Her body tensed again, but not as sharply as before. The pressure didn't spike as violently. The human's expression changed just slightly. There. You feel that. Her jaw tightened. It is different. Less like it's trying to crush you? Marginally. I'll take marginally, he said. That's progress. The medic looked deeply unimpressed. This proves nothing. Sure it does, the human replied. It proves your approach isn't the only one. He shifted position slightly, now fully focused. All right, next step. We're gonna try a stretch. That word alone triggered visible confusion across half the room. Oh, what? Someone asked. He didn't even look at them. Stretch. You know, extending muscles so they stop acting like they're about to snap. That is not a recognized medical procedure, the medic said immediately. Yeah, well, neither is whatever you've been doing, and she still can't walk. That shut him up again. The warrior exhaled slowly, clearly weighing her options. Pride was still there, strong, unyielding, but it was clashing now with something more practical. She needed to stand. Demonstrate, she said at last. The human blinked, then smiled slightly. All right. That I can do. What followed was, by every alien standard in the room, completely ridiculous. He showed her simple movements first, small extensions, controlled shifts, gradual release of tension instead of direct resistance. Nothing dramatic, nothing powerful, the exact opposite of how she had been trained to handle strain. She tried, and immediately hated it. This is inefficient, she said through clenched teeth. Yeah, it's not supposed to feel impressive, he replied. It's supposed to work. Another attempt, another small adjustment, and then a subtle change. Not enough to stand, not enough to move freely, but enough that the pressure didn't spike the same way. Enough that her body hesitated instead of walking. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Again, she said. He nodded. Yeah, again. The room stayed silent, watching as the most feared warrior on the station followed instructions that looked more like training for beginners than elite combat recovery. And somehow, it was working. Slowly, awkwardly, but undeniably. After several minutes, she stopped, her breathing steady, but different now. Less strained, less forced. Your methods, she said carefully, are not entirely ineffective. He let out a small laugh. I'm gonna frame that. For a brief second, just a second, something shifted in her expression. Not quite amusement, but close. And then the floor beneath them trembled again. Stronger this time. Much stronger. The gravity spike hit harder than any before it, and the moment it did, her body reacted instantly, tension surging, pressure returning with a force that made the progress they'd gained feel fragile. Her hand clenched against the floor. The human looked up. "Okay," he muttered.
Yeah.
"That's a problem." The next gravity surge didn't just roll through the station, it slammed into it. The floor groaned, metal supports straining as the force increased far beyond the earlier fluctuations. Several personnel staggered. One of the hovering diagnostic units dropped abruptly before stabilizing midair, and across the room, a few soldiers were forced down to one knee. At the center of it all, she didn't even try to stand this time. The moment the pressure hit, her entire body reacted in a way that made it obvious the earlier progress had been fragile at best. Her muscles tightened instinctively, far more aggressively than before, as if her body had learned from the previous attempts and decided the only solution now was to overcorrect even harder. The result was immediate. She froze. Not just unable to move, locked. Her breath caught sharply, her shoulders rigid, every line of her posture screaming controlled resistance against something overwhelming. The pressure had returned, stronger than before, deeper, more concentrated. Even shifting slightly looked impossible. The human's expression shifted, the casual ease fading into something more focused. "Yeah, okay. That's a full reset," he muttered under his breath. The medics rushed forward again, their earlier frustration now replaced with urgency. "The compression has intensified. This is escalating beyond safe thresholds." "No kidding," he said, stepping closer despite the tension in the room. "Do not interfere," one of them snapped. "I'm not interfering," he replied calmly. "I'm fixing it. You are not qualified." "She cannot move," he cut in, his tone still casual but carrying a quiet edge now. "Whatever you're doing isn't working. So either let me try something, or keep watching the situation get worse." That landed harder than his earlier comments. No one responded immediately. And then, "Continue," she said. Her voice was tighter this time, controlled, but strained in a way it hadn't been before. That was all he needed. He crouched slightly in front of her again, this time more deliberate, more attentive. The earlier humor hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted, still there, just quieter now, sitting behind focus instead of leading it. "All right," he said, glancing briefly at her posture. "We're not doing the same thing again. Your body's already adapted to fight harder, which is impressive, but also the problem." She exhaled slowly, her jaw tightening, then explained the solution. "Working on it," he said. He studied her for a moment longer, then looked up briefly, scanning the room as if expecting something to magically appear and solve it for him. It didn't. "Okay, so here's the issue," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "Your body reacts to gravity spikes by increasing internal tension. We reduce tension, spike hits, your system panics and doubles down harder. So we're stuck in a loop." "That is already known," one medic said impatiently. "Yeah, but I don't think you've solved it," he replied. He tapped the side of his head lightly, thinking. "We can't just fix you," he said finally, looking back at her. "We have to fix what's triggering you." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "The gravity itself is not something you can fix." "No," he agreed. "But we can cheat it." That earned a pause. "A controlled counterbalance," he continued. "Something that smooths out the spikes before your body has to react." "That would require a full stabilizer system," one of the engineers nearby said. "Not something that can be deployed on an individual level." The human tilted his head. "Or something smaller, cruder, way less approved." He stood up suddenly, grabbing his toolkit. "I'm gonna need parts." "You cannot be serious," the medic said. "I'm always serious," he replied. "I just don't look like it." He started walking toward the edge of the room, then paused, glancing back at her. "Try not to move too much. Or you know but all." Her glare followed him. "That is not reassuring." "Still not supposed to be," he shot back. What followed was, by every standard in the room, complete chaos. He pulled components from nearby panels, disconnected a secondary stabilizer module without asking permission, and assembled something that looked less like advanced alien technology and more like a questionable experiment held together by confidence alone. At one point, something sparked loudly. At another, a piece fell off entirely. "Yep. That wasn't important," he muttered, picking it up and reattaching it slightly differently. You are compromising critical systems, someone warned. Relax, it's a backup line, he said. Probably. You do not know that. I know enough. Eventually, he stepped back, holding something that looked like a compact harness with several unevenly aligned emitters attached. Okay, he said. This might work. Might, the medic echoed.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up on the wording. He walked back toward her, kneeling again as he carefully positioned the device. This is going to try to stabilize the gravity around you, he explained. Not perfectly. Just enough to stop your body from freaking out every time the planet sneezes. She looked down at the device, then back at him. You constructed this just now.
Yep.
With no prior testing. Also yep. A brief pause. Your confidence is either admirable or deeply concerning.
Both, he said.
He activated it. For a second, nothing happened. Then the emitters flickered to life, a faint hum building as the field engaged. The change was subtle, but immediate. Her shoulders lowered just slightly. The tension didn't disappear, but it didn't spike either. The pressure stabilized. Her eyes widened just a fraction. It is different. He grinned. Good different. Yes. Nice. He crouched slightly again, watching closely. All right. Now we combine it with what we were doing before. Controlled movement. No fighting the pressure. She nodded once. Carefully, very carefully, she shifted. This time her body reacted slower. Less aggressive. The pressure remained, but it didn't lock her in place. Another shift. Then, she lifted slightly. Not fully standing, but more than before. The room went completely silent again. She froze in that position, not from pressure this time, but from realization. Again, she said, quieter now. He nodded.
Yeah.
Again. With another controlled movement, she pushed further. And this time, she stood. Not perfectly, not steadily, but upright. For the first time since the collapse. A breath left her, slow and controlled, but carrying something different now. Relief. Disbelief. Maybe both. Their eyes met. For a moment, the room didn't exist. You did what they could not, she said quietly. He shrugged, rubbing the back of his neck.
Yeah, well.
Humans are good at finding shortcuts. Her gaze lingered on him for a second longer than before. Something had shifted. Not just trust. Something warmer. Quieter. And then, the device sparked violently. The hum spiked, and the gravity around her suddenly overcorrected. She lifted an inch off the ground. The human's eyes widened. Okay, that's new. For one suspended second, no one moved. She hovered just slightly above the ground, her body rigid again, but not from the same crushing pressure as before. This was different. Lighter. Unstable. The gravity field around her flickered unevenly, the device humming in an unpredictable rhythm that didn't match the planet's natural pulse. Then the hum spiked. She dropped. Not hard enough to injure her, but enough to make the entire room flinch. Okay, yeah. That's definitely not supposed to happen, he said quickly, already reaching for the device. Another surge. This time the field overcompensated again, lifting her just enough to throw off her balance as she tried to adjust. I am beginning to question your definition of stable, she said, her voice tight as she tried to remain upright. Yeah, that's fair, he admitted. Hold on, don't move. I was not planning to. The device crackled, one of the emitters sparking as the gravity wave outside shifted again. The human crouched immediately, hands moving quickly, adjusting connections, muttering under his breath. Come on, you were working 5 seconds ago? You constructed it in less than that, one of the medics pointed out sharply. Not helping, he shot back. Another fluctuation rolled through, and this time the field dipped instead of spiking. Her body reacted instinctively, but the response wasn't as violent as before. The pressure didn't crush down. It shifted, uneven, but manageable. That was new. He noticed it too. Wait, he said, his movements slowing just slightly. That's better. I would not describe this as better, she replied, adjusting her stance as the field wavered around her. No, I mean your reaction, he clarified. You're not locking up anymore.
She paused, testing it.
Carefully, she shifted her weight again. The pressure was still there, but it didn't surge uncontrollably. It didn't trap her in place. Her body hesitated, then adapted. Her eyes narrowed slightly.
Continue, she said.
He nodded, focusing again, tightening one connection and stabilizing another. The device responded, the hum evening out, not perfect, but no longer chaotic. All right, he said. I think I see the problem. It's not about forcing perfect stability. It's about giving your body just enough room to adjust without panicking. That is an inefficient system. Yeah, he said with a small grin. But it works. Another adjustment. This time, when the gravity shifted, the field absorbed part of the impact instead of overreacting. The rest passed through, but softer, slower.
She stepped.
A real step. Not forced. Not strained. Controlled. The room didn't react immediately, like no one quite believed what they were seeing. Then she took another. And another. Each one more stable than the last. The pressure was still there, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. It wasn't locking her down. It moved with her instead of against her. He leaned back slightly, exhaling. Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the balance. She straightened fully now, her posture returning to something closer to what it had been before, but different. Less rigid. Less forced. More natural. Silence spread through the room again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was realization. One of the officers stepped forward slowly. She is fully mobile. Looks like it, the human said. The medic who had argued earlier stared at the device, then at her, clearly struggling to reconcile what he was seeing. This should not be possible. Yeah, the human replied casually. You'd be surprised how often that happens. She took a few more steps, testing the limits. A slight shift in gravity passed through the room, but instead of freezing, her body adjusted smoothly. The device hummed, her muscles responded, and for the first time since the incident, there was no visible strain. She stopped, turned, looked at him. This time, there was no irritation in her expression. No resistance. Just something steady. Focused. It is done, she said. Mostly, he replied. You'll still need to get used to it. And I should probably fix that thing so it doesn't try to launch you again. That would be preferable. A faint ripple of quiet laughter moved through some of the lower-ranking personnel, quickly suppressed. The tension in the room finally broke. And then, almost immediately, it shifted into something else. Attention.
Respect. Curiosity.
The same officers who had dismissed him earlier were now watching him like he had just performed something incomprehensible. One of them spoke carefully. Your methods are not standard. Yeah, he said. That's kind of the point. You identified a solution that our systems did not. Your systems are trying to be perfect, he replied. I was just trying to make it not worse. That didn't fully answer the question. But it didn't need to. The results were standing right in front of them. She stepped closer now, closing the distance between them with calm, measured confidence. No hesitation. No instability. Up close, the difference was even more noticeable, not just in her movement, but in how she carried herself. The tension that had once defined every motion was gone, replaced with something more controlled, more fluid. She stopped just in front of him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, you treated me, she said, as though I were not untouchable. He blinked once. Was I supposed to?
A pause.
Then, very slightly, the corner of her expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close enough to matter. No, she said. You are not. He let out a small breath, somewhere between a laugh and relief. Yeah, well, I'm not great with that kind of thing. That is evident. Another brief silence, but this one wasn't tense. It was comfortable. Around them, the room had started to move again. Conversations resumed, quieter than before, but filled with a different tone. Word would spread. He could already tell. It always did. And by the end of the cycle, he'd probably have some ridiculous reputation he didn't ask for. He scratched the back of his neck. So, you should be good. Just take it easy for a bit. Let your body adjust. And if the pressure comes back, we tweak the settings. She didn't move away. Then you will remain available, she said. It wasn't a question. He hesitated for a second, then smiled slightly. Yeah, I guess I can do that. Another pause. And then she turned, walking away with the same commanding presence she'd had before, but now there was something different beneath it. Something lighter. Something that hadn't been there when he first saw her. Not just strength. Balance. He watched her go for a second, then looked down at the still humming device. Okay, he muttered to himself. Definitely fixing that float thing. Behind him, one of the officers approached carefully. You will be required to document your methods. He sighed. Of course I will. As he picked up his tools again, glancing once more toward the warrior who no longer needed help just to stand, he shook his head slightly. On a planet where everything depended on resisting the weight of the world, it turned out the real solution wasn't about fighting harder. It was about knowing when to stop.